This sermon is the final entry in our sermon series on living our UU covenant and values, which can be found on the back page of your order of service. Each sermon in this series stands by itself, but if you want to catch up on any of the previous installments, it is in our online sermon archive. Once a month this congregational year, we've been exploring our new values and covenant adopted last summer at UU General Assembly, which we often abbreviate as GA. So if you're around UU circles, GA doesn't mean Georgia, it means General Assembly. And this summer, GA is being held where? Baltimore, that's right. So who's going for like one or more days? Okay, quite a few of you. So it'll be Wednesday through Sunday, June 18th through the 22nd, and this is your final monthly reminder. Just consider attending for one or more days, or even if you can get down there just for a few hours. I think you'll find it's really worth your time, especially if you've never been to GA before. It's really a crash course in our movement, just being able to walk around the exhibition hall or having this experience of being in a room with like 5,000 other UUs. I don't know how many will be there, but it'll be a lot since it's on the East Coast. More information is available at uua.org/GA. In previous months, we've focused in turn on each of our 6 UU values and what it means to put love at the center. We also explored the inspirations paragraph about the wide array of sources that we draw from in this big tent movement of Unitarian Universalism. And today we'll cover the final 3 sections that we haven't yet addressed in depth. The opening sentence about covenant, and then the final 2 sections on inclusion and then freedom of belief. Let's start with that very first sentence, which says, as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant. And we're kind of covenanting on 3 levels. We're covenanting congregation to congregation through our association, and then as individuals, as individual UUs, just like what you saw as part of our new member welcoming. And we covenant, just as we promise to one another our mutual trust and support, we promise to support and assist one another in our ministries, broadly speaking. And if you look closely at the descriptions of our 6 values, you'll see, I know this is really tiny print, but if you just notice the 7 highlighted yellow things on the side, those are the words covenant. That if you exclude function words, so exclude like and we and to and of, covenant is the most frequent significant word. It is named our UU covenant and values, so maybe that's not a huge surprise. But each time covenant is followed by one or more ways that we're making this promise to one another to live out our values. These aren't just abstract things. As a point of comparison, there was a lot to love about our old 7 principles that we expanded, at least here, to an 8th principle, and now that's been incorporated into this. But Bill Sinkford, a former president of the UUA, is right in his critique that the principles were not only abstract, but they were actually passive statements. There were no verbs in them, no action words at all, and that in a faith that praised itself on activism. So based in part on that realization about the principles, our new values and covenant really emphasize the actions that our shared values should inspire us to take together. Now, covenant is an ancient word. We could spend a whole lot, it literally dates back like 3,000 years. We do not have time for that history, but covenant is a really old religious word. I'm just going to limit myself to one significant inflection point, that long before the formation of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church in America that merged in 1961 to form the Unitarian Universalist Association, long before that, the history of covenant was core to our congregational governance structure. It goes back almost 400 years to a covenant called the Cambridge Platform of 1648. And if you want to be really nerdy, it's about 30 pages. You can go home and read it online if you want to. It's actually pretty interesting. It strongly influenced the whole free church tradition. So the free church tradition is really different than like the Episcopal church tradition. Like the bishop controls everything, and the bishop like owns, like if the congregation decides they want to like leave Episcopalianism, well, we own the building and the communion china, so you can leave if you want. The congregation can leave, but we own everything. Or like Presbyterian polity, there's like a presbytery that governs things. We are a free church, like literally this congregation we own the building. We could vote to leave the UUA. Let's not do that. But we have a lot of freedom. And so that all comes from the Cambridge platform of 1648 that strongly, we share that with like the United Church of Christ dates their understanding of covenant back to that same Cambridge platform, the Disciples of Christ that know that tradition, other kind of pieces of the free church tradition. And so you'll sometimes hear Unitarian Universalism described as a covenantal rather than creedal religious tradition. Creedal religious traditions, from the Latin word credo, that means I believe, emphasize the importance of everyone coming to agreement about one single solitary common creed. We all believe exactly this. So right belief. An example is the Nicene Creed that some of you may have grown up reading weekly, reciting weekly. And so anybody grow up weekly in the creed, like you just said, this is what we believe. Orthodox religious traditions require adherents to profess that they believe a set list of doctrines. In contrast, Unitarian Universalism is part of, again, this free church tradition that is covenantal rather than creedal, that emphasizes right relationship and right action. Again, as I said before, we believe in deeds, not creeds, that behavior is believable, that you don't have to believe alike to love alike. And if you look closely, you'll see that our UU values and covenant, it is not a list of 20 impossible things to believe before breakfast. It is about ways we agree to live out our shared values. Covenant is also about a lot more than just this new UU values and covenant that we've been reflecting on this past year. This covenant that was worked out on the floor of General Assembly is at a really high level, in a lot of ways focused on like changing the world. But we need to like change our lives too. And if you've been active in UU spaces for a while, especially in small groups, have any of you ever been part of a UU group that either you started by writing a covenant or you talked about covenant? Anybody? Okay, so I see a decent number of hands. I will say, if you've ever been part of a group in this congregation that had conflict, the number one thing that I came to intervene and do is to help you write a covenant, to help you agree how to play well in the sandbox together. So that is our number one UU way of doing that, to stay in right relationship with one another. There are a lot of different covenants. I want to give you a very quick guided tour through my top 10 favorite ways to do covenant. The first is to use I statements. I'm on a much safer ground if I say, I believe this, I believe that. That gives a lot of space for you to be like, all right, well, that's just your opinion, man. Like I'm just speaking for myself. See if you can feel the difference, though, if I shift to second person and say, you believe this or you believe that. We really start to notch up the likelihood of defensiveness or of me saying something not quite in the way you would say it, or unless you're the Queen or I guess now King of England, don't use the royal we. Be really careful. I mean, there are some things we've agreed that we believe, but just be really careful about being in a group and just say, oh, we all think this. There may be people that are like, not actually, or not quite in the way you're saying. If you're really in a heated discussion, it can also be really skillful to experiment with even double I statements. So instead of saying, when you do this, I say, when I hear this, I experience anxiety. Really double back on that I. This is about me and my stuff. Number two. Covenantal best practice. Again, for me, your mileage may vary. Share the airtime. Some of us, I will own this, are champion class participators. We're ready to go. Others of us need to kind of like make space or take space, lean it a little more or lean it a little back. And because I know some people, it's just really hard. They think they're making space, but they're not really. The number one thing I found, and this may be useful to some of you, is to establish in your small group the rule 3 before me. At least if I share once, at least 3 other people have to speak before I can speak a second time, and then 3 more people before I can speak a third time. 3 before me is a way of sharing the airtime. But also, incline yourself. If you're a little more reticent, incline yourself. That can also be part of the covenant to share. Again, only if you feel comfortable. Number 3, identifying in. Our human brains, as you've heard me say before, they're like Velcro for things we disagree with, and they're like Teflon for things we agree with or like. And so identifying in means if you're really feeling yourself identifying out, saying, you're just really noticing all the ways that like this group doesn't work for me, I don't like the way we're doing things, try to actively say, let me flip that around and just notice, what are the things I like about the people in this group? What are the things, really incline yourself to identify in. And that doesn't mean you have to like pretend you're paper over stuff. It's just trying to compensate for your brain's natural, the way we've evolved. Number 4, when the going gets rough, turn to curiosity and wonder. Just wonder like, where are they possibly coming from? You know, like what could their behavior possibly about? In almost there is a story there. And I invite you to get curious about that. What's really going on here? Number 5 is try taking new ideas for a test drive instead of immediately judging them or rejecting them or even accepting them. You don't have to buy them, but just like take them for a test drive. You may find that some new ideas aren't actually either as problematic or that big a deal. Sometimes they are, but just try taking them for a test drive. Number 6, practice both and thinking instead of it can only be this or only be that. Are there ways in which each of these perspectives has some piece of the truth, maybe not even an equal piece of the truth, but notice, are multiple things true? That can really open up some space. Number 7, you can agree to disagree or table an issue. If things are just getting, have you ever been in one of those discussions where it feels like you're just beating your head against a brick wall and like the brick wall isn't changing, but your head's starting to hurt? At that point, you may well just be like, we need to like agree to disagree or just table this if possible, you know, if it's not super urgent that you decide. Or to notice, do y'all know that I sometimes mention the acronym HALT, which stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If any of those things is going on for like one or more of the people, you need to halt and like fix the hunger or the angry or the lonely or the tired and come back when you're in a better heart space or a better head space. This is an important one. I think sometimes in groups, people like 2 people are kind of going at it or 2 or 3 people and other people are just sitting back and like feeling like just watching this train wreck happen. I find it helpful sometimes to empower everyone in the group to say anyone in this group is empowered at any point if things are getting really bad and spiraling to just say time out, just stop. We need to like take a break. We need to go walk around the building separately or something like that. Just empowering people that you can call time out. Number 9 is we practice consent culture. We can encourage one another to try new things and participate, but everyone always has permission to pass. And they don't have to explain them. So they just say, I just need to pass in this moment for reasons that may not be clear to you. And for yourself, listen to your emotions. Trust your gut about what it's telling you, whether to kind of lean in and maybe risk participating, even though you're a little uncomfortable, or whether you're really feeling like, I'm just not in a place, you know, I need to pass. And last but not least, I find it sometimes helpful if you are someone who struggles with interrupting people or if you get interrupted a lot, it can sometimes help to either have some kind of object that you pass around talking, or I sometimes find the phrase, the next person doesn't get to talk until the person sharing says, I'm complete. And that way you know they're done. You don't have to like leap in and think they're done. Or if someone still interrupts, you can say, actually, I'm not complete. You know, and if you're a regular interrupter, you could say, are you complete? It's just a way of one among many skills for doing that. Now, your mileage may vary with these 10 practices. There are lots of others, but these are all time-tested and may help you either interpersonally, in your relationships, in small groups, etc. For now, though, we need to move to the second of the 3 sections we haven't yet covered in our UU Values and Covenant, which is the inclusion paragraph. It goes like this. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. I sometimes talk about this, like, it really clarified things for me, that it turns out that women notice sexism more than men because that word barrier, they literally slam into it in a way that's invisible to men, right? People that are disabled notice the, problematic streets in downtown Frederick more than able-bodied people, right? So that, LGBTQ people notice heterosexist things, but, it's just more visible to you. If you're BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, or person of color, racist things are just going to be more obvious to you, like the whole DAP thing, right? That's just, terrorist fist bump. I mean, come on! You're showing your lack of familiarity with anything besides white culture. So it continues. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect, coming alongside, not leading or following behind, but alongside. We strive to be an association of congregations that is truly welcoming to all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities. We've talked a lot about these power dynamics before, particularly in the sermon in this series on justice, as well as many in the past. So I'm going to limit myself for now to just one quote that to me embodies the shift from it's one thing to intend to be welcoming. It's another thing to welcome someone in a way that they experience as being welcoming, right? Because we can intend to welcome someone but actually be quite exclusionary. This quote emerges from the Aboriginal Australian justice movement and goes like this. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time and my time, she would probably say. But if you have come together because you realize that your liberation is bound up with my liberation. This is what Layla's story this morning about Ubuntu, I am because we are. Really realizing existentially our interdependent web of all existence. If you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. That's what ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect look like. And now we come to the final section in our year-long journey through the UU Values and Covenant. Some of you may have said, oh, well, this has been a really interesting journey. Others of you may be like, oh, finally, we don't have to keep talking about this. It's fine, whichever one that is. I hope at least our new UU Values and Covenant seem more familiar to you than they did a year ago as a result of this journey. So last, but very much not least, the freedom of belief clause, which says congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Throughout UU history, major covenants like this new one that we have been exploring have often included some variation of I think of it as the get out of jail free card or the freedom of belief clause. It's a way of being clear. This covenant truly is not a crypto creed. We're not slipping in a creed through the back door. We do not require every individual to attest that you agree with 100% of every word and the precise way it is written. Indeed, I will say, if it were up to me, these values would be about 50% shorter. I don't know. I would have edited them down a lot, but that's just me. But I'm fine with it because it's not just about me. This is about what we believe, not just what Carl believes. And the final vote last summer, it passed overwhelmingly at General Assembly. 80.2% of delegates voted to approve this, but 19.8% didn't. So for whatever confluence of reasons. So you can see even right there was diversity, but 80% believed it. Approved it. So this becomes our new UU Values and Covenant. This covenant is about UUs in general being transparent and clear regarding the direction we are intending to move collectively, even as we recognize that we're a big tent and there's room for dissent, there's room for diversity in all of this. So the question to me is not, do you believe every word in our UU Values and Covenant? Instead, the question is, in this season of your life, do you freely choose to be part of this UU Big Tent tradition that is trying to take action living out these values in this way? Even as we can do lots of other things in addition to what is in these values and covenant. It is a decision we're each free to discern our conscience around, and I really am grateful to be on that ongoing journey with all of you. We've now spent a year doing a deep dive into these new UU Values and Covenant, which I'm soon going to stop referring to as new, because they're not going to be that new anymore. And I deeply believe that our values of interdependence, of pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity with love at the center, I truly believe our world needs these more desperately than ever. So as we each continue to discern individually and collectively, how are we called to live out our UU Values and Covenant? I invite you to rise and body your spirit as we sing together hymn 119, Once to Every Soul and Nature.